Real Charlie here with the final installment of a trip through my disc collection, my home disc collection. We are up to the T's, so we are going from the T's to the Z's, and there's actually less films today to talk about, so this should be a shorter video than the other four, but I hope you've enjoyed this so far, and I'm very excited to present my final 28 films. Move our disco snow globe out of the way and let's get started. So the first thing that we have here is the three different series of Armistead Maupin's Tales of the City. So back in the early 90s, PBS created Tales of the City. That was the first adaptation of this seminal work from Armistead Maupin, which is my favorite series of books of all time. I have reread them and reread them and reread them over the years. I've listened to the audiobooks, and I own, obviously, all three. So these are based on the first three books. Tales of the City was on PBS, and then a couple years later, More Tales and Further Tales came along from Showtime and kept some of the original cast. The Michaels keep changing. And then, of course, earlier last year, I shouldn't say earlier, I should say 2019, Netflix produced a brand new series that really altered from the original books. So these are very, very they follow the books 100%, and which is what I love about these. And they have some really great guest stars, and Laura Linney and Olympia Dukakis actually were, of course, amazing as Marianne Singleton and Anna Madrigal, excuse me, my favorite fictional character of all time, and I blank on her, Anna Madrigal. From there, we've got a really great indie film from Chris Mason Johnson called Test, which takes place in the 1980s, just as the AIDS crisis is hitting. And he is a dancer, the young boy that is well, I shouldn't say boy, the young man who is at the center of the story, and he sees sort of the specter of AIDS all around him, and has to figure out whether to get tested or not at some point, which is what we all went through during the early and mid-'80s. From there, we go to Rob Epstein's The Times of Harvey Milk, which is a fantastic documentary on the politician Harvey Milk, who was assassinated. It's just an incredible work of history, and I'm so happy that I have this on DVD. From there, we jump into more overseas. This is another Ventura Pons film called To Die or Not. Ventura is one of my favorite international directors, and so if you don't know his work, it's really it's great to get started with any of his films, but To Die or Not is really a great film. From there, we go into the Thoma, Finland biopic, which came out recently. That was a great addition. I have this on Blu-ray. It follows the artist who became Thoma Finland, who was an erotic gay male artist, that his drawings ended up sort of personifying what it meant to be sort of a hot, masculine gay man in the 70s and 80s, and actually all the way through until now. There's like a Thoma Finland Foundation, and you can get Thoma Finland gear and all kinds of things like that. From there, we have the lovely, lovely indie rom-com called Trick, which, if you've never seen this, it's Christian Campbell and J.P. Pittock, and it's absolutely lovely. Tori Spellman is actually also in it as the best friend, and it's just about two really sweet young men in New York City in the 90s trying to find a place. They met at a club, and they're trying to find a place to hook up, and they just can't find anywhere, and so they just end up talking and being together the whole night, which is really fun. And that also has a featured role of one of my favorite people in the world, Steve Haynes, who is Tired Old Queen at the Movies on YouTube. So if you love Steve's videos, it's fun to watch Trick to see him in there. He has a small role, but it's actually small but mighty, as with everything that Steve does. After that, there was a film called Ultraviolet that came out a while ago, a long time ago. But before that, there was a British mini series called Ultraviolet, which was about vampires, and I just adored this so much that I'm just really glad I have this on DVD. This is something that is probably not going to stream, and so it's another great title to have in a personal home collection. From there, we have the wonderful Peruvian Undertow, about a gay man who was married and to a woman, and also had a male lover on the side, and the lover dies, and so it's this whole sort of ghost story thing. It was widely acclaimed when it came out, and it's really a great example of international cinema. From there, we have another really great indie American film, Urbania, which came out probably a long time ago. I don't have the date on that, but it's probably late 80s, early 90s. Really fun, atmospheric, mystery sort of thing, and also in your face as well for the time period. After that, Todd Haynes' Velvet Goldmine, which is about the glam rock era of music. And this is one of those films of Todd's that probably the only film of Todd's that I had to sort of grow on me. When I first watched it, I didn't like it as much as his earlier films, but then on repeated watchings, obviously I loved it enough that I now own the Blu-ray. And I think it's just a really great film. Jonathan Rhys-Meyer is in it. I believe that's how his name is pronounced, and Ewan McGregor and Toni Collette as well. From there, one of my top 10 all-time favorite films, Victor Victoria. Victor Victoria stars Julie Andrews, Robert Preston, James Garner, and Leslie Ann Warren. It's directed by Julie's husband, Blake Edwards, and featuring music by Henry Mancini. This is an absolute classic must-see for anyone interested in musicals and a farce and gender play and all that stuff. It's just really, really, really fun, and every performance in it is just spectacular. I have loved this film since I saw it in the theater back in the 80s, and I continue to love it every time I watch it, and I'm so happy to have it on Blu-ray. From there, we've got The Visitor. The Visitor is a really another really great indie film about immigration. So if you don't know this film, Richard Jenkins from 6 Feet Under stars in it. And Hans Sleeman is also in it as well. So if you don't know this film and you're interested, it takes place in New York City. It's a Connecticut college professor who owns a place in the city, and finds out that people are squatting in it, and then he ends up befriending the people. It's a really fascinating film, a story that only an indie film could really capture. After that, another great Pedro Almodovar film, Volver. I'm not going to say much about that except just to go see every possible Pedro Almodovar film you can and find them and love them as much as I do. After that, we've got Eton Fox's Walk on Water. We actually have 3 Eton Fox's films in this section from T through Z. Walk on Water is the sort of Romeo and Juliet gay male film about an Israeli man and a Palestinian man who fall in love together, and it's tragic and it's gorgeous and it's really accessible. From there, we have Cheryl Dunye's seminal work, The Watermelon Woman, which is absolutely, again, one of my top 10 favorite films of all time. This was done in the late 80s, and it just is absolutely a classic lesbian film, an indie film, film history, African-American film history. Just, it has so many great aspects to it. From there, we go into Weekend, and Weekend was Andrew Haig's film that came out in the theaters, and I was really a bit concerned about Weekend when it came out because it had such huge hype, and I thought, am I going to like this or am I going to not like this? Weekend, I feel like it really captures a younger generation's coming out film just beautifully, and it's a very simple story, but it just packs a lot of punch. It's a story about 2 young men who meet and end up spending the weekend together, and they're not sure if they're falling in love or not. And they really have opposite views on living and on politics, but they are attracted to each other, very attracted to each other. And it's just really heady and cerebral and beautifully filmed. Haig is just a great filmmaker. From there, we get into Gurinder Chadha's What's Cooking, which is my favorite Thanksgiving film of all time. If you've never seen this, watch it in June or watch it in November, right before Thanksgiving. It's just an absolute joy, and really talks about how America is a melting pot and how great families are together, the tragedies and the joys of families coming together for holidays. Coming up next, we have four boxes together, but they only encompass 2 films. So I have 2 copies of White Christmas, and I have 2 copies of The Wizard of Oz. So White Christmas, both of those are Blu-rays. However, one was a 65th anniversary edition that came out last year, and the other one was a previous Blu-ray that was released. White Christmas is my #1 favorite Christmas film of all time. And I just adore this film and cry every year when I watch it and laugh. And the red box has a sing-along option to it, which shows the lyrics, which is really fun. From there, of course, everyone's favorite, The Wizard of Oz. I have it on Blu-ray and I have it on 4K as well. It's just gorgeous. The great thing about watching a film like this, a classic, older film like this in high def, is that you get to see the imperfections, but also you get to see things like really crisp detail of like the set paintings in the background. So instead of them just sort of being blurry in a regular, like either an SD format or a DVD format or on TV streaming, you actually see like how you see the plasticity of the plants in Munchkin Land, and it's just, to me, it's just really fascinating, and it becomes a more beautiful film to me. After that, we have the absolute hysterical What's Up, Doc? What's Up, Doc is Barbra Streisand, Ryan O'Neal, the illuminating Madeline Kahn, who is just one of the funniest people who ever graced this planet, and directed by Peter Bogdanovich. Just a funny, funny, funny film. From there, we have 2 more films by Eton Fox. We have Yossi and Jagger. Yossi and Jagger is the original film that came out about a love story between 2 Israeli soldiers. Yossi is the follow-up film that follows one of the characters after he is older and now a doctor. And then Laura Linney and Mark Ruffalo's amazing indie film, You Can Count on Me, directed by Ken Lonergan. This is one of my favorite brother and sister films. There's not a lot of brother and sister films out there, and this one is an absolute favorite, and really helped to put Linney and Ruffalo on the map as far as their talent and their ability as an actor. After that, the British film Young Soul Rebels, which is an Isaac Gillian film about 2 young DJ friends. One is gay and one is straight, and they're both of African descent, living in the UK, and it's really, really fun. There's a murder mystery that gets involved in and gets sort of intertwined in it, and it's lots of fun. And finally, my Z film is Zero Patience. Canadian filmmaker John Grayson created this amazing film in the midst of the worst of the AIDS crisis. He dared to make a musical about AIDS, and not a musical, not a tragic musical in the sense that Rent was a tragic musical, but Zero Patience is really a campy celebratory musical about a horrible, horrible time in many of our lives. So if you've never seen Zero Patience, it's an absolute work of art, and I'm so happy to own that on DVD. And again, this is another reason to have this fantastic collection. So I would just like to thank you all for traveling with me on this journey. I will do some updates, and I'm thinking actually this has given me some great ideas to maybe start a podcast at some point. So you will be seeing more audio and video from Real Charlie down the road. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a safe and happy holiday season, and look for my year-end list coming up in a couple of weeks. And if you haven't seen the rest of these videos, go back. They're all in the same playlist on YouTube under Real Charlie. Or go to my blog to keep up with my blog. I post every other day on my blog. I post reviews of film and television, and occasional some trends in technology that have to do with media. but mainly it's a review blog, and I've been doing it for a long time, for over 11 years, and I'm absolutely still in love with what I do on that blog. And so I thank you for tuning in and checking out and reading and listening and watching, and have a great end of the year, and I will see you soon. Take care. Bye.